BFTB Boxing, best fight the best. So I just wanted to take the time to bring up this subject, that I'm gonna talk about, and I'm speaking this way because I want to make sure that the full grasp of it is heard, because I don't think you guys actually understand this shit. I really don't think y'all get the whole concept of what I'm about to spit out. But I'm always saying remove the name, and then look at the numbers, because numbers don't lie. I'm always saying that, but people are, they're caught up in the name. They're caught up in this. They're caught up in that. They can't look at facts for themselves and roll with the facts. So I did my research today. I just sat at work, let my guys do their thing, and I just focused on a couple of boxing things. And I'm going to bring up these three fighters. I'm going to bring up these three fighters, and I'm going to go over their numbers. And then at the end of the video, well, not at the end, but towards the end, I'm going to tell you who these three fighters are. But we're going to go over their numbers. And I'm pretty sure just by probably the title, one, and then by one of the numbers, you're going to know who one of the fighters is that I'm talking about. But we're going to go over three fighters, right? Fighter A. Fighter A was in his first 40 fights. He was 38-2 with 37 knockouts. He had fought 4 undefeated fighters. He fought 18 fighters that had between 1 and 4 losses. He had 10 championship fights. And he fought 18 fighters that had more than 5 losses. Right? That's Fighter A. Fighter A. Fighter B, in his first 40 fights, he was 39-1 with 35 knockouts. He had fought 2 undefeated fighters. He fought 20 fighters that had between 1 and 4 losses. And he had 5 championship fights. And he fought 18 fighters that had 5 or more losses. That's fighter number. That's Fighter B. Fighter C is 40-0 with 39 knockouts. Fighter C fought 7 undefeated fighters. Fighter C fought 16 fighters with between 1 and 4 losses. Fighter C fought 8 championship fights. Fighter C fought 17 fighters with 5 or more losses. So now let's compare to see, of these three, A, B, and C, let's just see how the numbers match up. Resume-wise, well, Fighter C clearly has the better resume. Fighter A is 38-2 with 37 knockouts. Fighter B is 39-1 with 35 knockouts. And Fighter C is 40-0 with 39 knockouts. So Fighter C is undefeated, has a better resume, and knocked out 39 of his 40 fighters, right? So now let's compare their undefeated fighters that they fought. Fighter A fought 4 undefeated fighters in his first 40 fights. He fought 4 undefeated fighters, and he knocked out 3 of them. He went 4-0, and he knocked out 3. Fighter B fought 2 undefeated fighters. Again, Fighter B was 39-1 with 35 knockouts, and Fighter B only fought 2 undefeated fighters, and he knocked them both out. Fighter C fought 7 undefeated fighters, and he knocked out all 7 undefeated fighters. He gave all 7 of them their first loss. All right, so if you're comparing resume, Fighter C has the best resume, right? If we're comparing who they fought, the undefeated fighters they fought, well, Fighter C fought more than Fighter A and Fighter B, right? Okay, so now let's compare how many fighters that they fought that had between 1 and 4 losses, right? So that one goes to Fighter B, because Fighter B fought 20. Half of his fights were fighters that had between 1 and 4 losses. Fighter B fought 20 fighters that had between 1 to 4 losses, and he knocked out 18 of them. Fighter A fought 18 fighters, so he fought just under half of his fights were fighters that had between 1 and 4 losses. And he got knocked out. He got stopped. Well, not knocked out, but he got stopped by 2 of them. You know, so he went 16-2, and he got stopped by 2 of those fighters. Fighter C, just under half of his fights, 16 of them, 16 of the 40, so just under half, 4 under the half, had between 1 and 4 losses, and he knocked out 15 of the 16. So in this one, this goes to Fighter B, because Fighter B fought more. He knocked out more. But then after Fighter B, it will go to Fighter C in second place, because Fighter C fought, he fought a little bit less. He fought 2 less than Fighter A, but he beat all of them. Fighter A lost twice to fighters that had between 1 and 4 losses, right? So now on to championship fights, right? So Fighter A has 10 championship fights in his first 40 fights, but he lost 2 of them. Those 2 losses that he has on his resume were in championship fights. So in 10 championship fights, he went 8-2, right? Fighter B only has 5 championship fights, and he's 5-0 with 4 KOs. And Fighter C has 8 championship fights, and he's 8-0 with 7 KOs. So if we're looking at this to see who is the best, who has the best when it comes to championship fights, that would be Fighter C, because he has more than Fighter B, because Fighter B has 5, Fighter C has 8. And he has less than Fighter A, who has 10, but Fighter A lost 2. So if you look at the win column, both Fighter A and Fighter C both have 8 wins in their championship fights, but Fighter C has no losses, whereas Fighter A has 2 losses. So if we're saying, who has the better championship fight resume, it's Fighter C, right? So, and then the last one is fights that you've had with opponents that had more than 5 losses. So for this category, you want this to be the smallest number, right? Because if you have the bigger number, means you're fighting weaker competition or lesser competition, because these guys are getting beat. So you're fighting guys that are getting beat by other people. So the greater this number is, then the worst the fighter is. So so you want to have a smaller number when it comes to fighting fighters with 5 or more losses. You want to have a smaller number. So in this one, Fighter C wins because Fighter C had only fought 17 fighters that had 5 or more losses. Fighter B fought 18 fighters with 5 or more losses, and he got knocked out by 1 of them. And Fighter A fought 18 fighters, and he knocked out all 18. But he still fought more fighters with 5 or more losses than Fighter C, right? So if you're stacking up the numbers, if you're looking at the resume and stacking up the numbers, Fighter C is a better fighter than Fighter A and Fighter B based on the numbers. Fighter C has a better resume. He's 40-0 with 39 knockouts. The Fighter B is close, but Fighter B is 39-1 with 35 knockouts. So he doesn't have as much power as Fighter C, and he got knocked out himself. Fighter A is 38-2, so he's not too far off. These are all good resumes. He's not too far off from Fighter C, but Fighter C still is undefeated, 40-0 with 39 knockouts. Fighter A is 38-2 with 37 knockouts, and both of his losses are stoppage losses, right? So resume-wise, that's Fighter C is a better resume. Undefeated fighter-wise, Fighter C fought 7, Fighter B fought 2, and Fighter A fought 4. Fighters with 1 to 4 losses, that goes to Fighter B, who fought 20. And then Fighter A fought 18, but he lost 2. And then Fighter C fought 16 and won all of them. So that Fighter B wins that column. And then Fighter C is second because he didn't lose to any of them. And then Fighter A. And then lastly, the people that they fought had more than 5 losses. Fighter C wins that. So Fighter C won the resume, they won the undefeated fighters, they won the championship fights, and they won fighters with 5 or more losses. You know, they fought the least amount of fighters with 5 or more losses. So, now let's unveil this, right? Fighter A is Vitaly Klitschko. In Vitaly Klitschko's first 40 fights, he was 38-2 with 37 knockouts and 2 losses. He had only fought 4 undefeated fighters. He fought 18 fighters that had between 1 and 4 losses, and he was stopped by 2 of them. He had 10 championship fights. He went 8-2 and was stopped in both of those two. And those 2 losses were stoppages in both of those fights. And he fought 18 fighters that had 5 or more losses. That was Vitaly Klitschko. And he fought for the vacant WBC title. So while everybody's saying, oh, Deontay Wilder's not the real champ because Deontay Wilder never fought, Vitaly fought for a vacant WBC title. He fought Corey Sanders for the vacant WBC title. Vacant. There was no champion. It was a vacant title. That is a fact. Don't believe me? Go to BoxRec. Fighter B is Vladimir Klitschko. Vladimir Klitschko was 39-1 with 35 KOs. He had only fought 2 undefeated fighters. 2. He fought 20 fighters that had between 1 and 4 losses. Really good. He knocked out 18 of them, went the distance with 2. He had 5 championship fights. He had 5 championship fights with 4 KOs. He went the distance with 1 of them. He fought 18. He fought 18 fighters with 5 or more losses. Vladimir Klitschko fought 18 fighters with 5 or more losses. And he was knocked out by 1 of them. And the dude that knocked him out had 13 losses. You know, Ross Purity was 24-13-1, and he knocked Vladimir Klitschko out. Deontay Wilder is 40-0 with 39 knockouts. He's fought 7 undefeated fighters. He is 16-0 against fighters with between 1 and 4 losses. He's 8-0 in championship fights with 7 knockouts. And he has 17 knockouts of any fighter that has more than 5 losses. He's knocked every last one of them out. Factual numbers, right? So now all you fucking AJ fan bitches talking about, oh, well, look what Wilder did in his first 21 fights, and look what Joshua did in his. Well, look what Wilder did in his first 40, and look what Vladimir and Vitaly did in theirs. Look what Vladimir Klitschko and Vitaly Klitschko did in their first 40 fights. And let's see how they match up with Deontay Wilder's. Because Vladimir Klitschko is that's your standard bearer. You know, Vladimir Klitschko is the standard bearer. He's the one that gave y'all the glory. You dethrone Vladimir Klitschko. You know, you dethrone this great fighter. You dethrone this great. That's who you dethrone. Oh, Wilder ducked him. But then you'll say, well, your excuse will be, well, look what Wilder did in his first fights, and look what Joshua did in his first fight. Well, look what Vladimir did. Look what Vitaly did. If you match up their careers with Wilder's career is far superior. Numbers don't lie. Men lie. Fan bitches lie. Numbers don't lie. Vitaly Klitschko was 38-2 with 37 knockouts. He fought 4 undefeated fighters. Vladimir Klitschko was 39-1 with 35 knockouts. He fought 2 undefeated fighters. Deontay Wilder is 40-0 with 39 knockouts, and he fought 7 undefeated fighters. Vladimir Klitschko was 16-2 against fighters with between 1 and 4 losses. And he got stopped in both of his losses. I don't give a fuck what y'all talk about his shoulder. He got stopped. The fight got stopped. He was stopped. Vladimir Klitschko went 20-0 against fighters with between 1 and 4 losses. Deontay Wilder went 16-0 with 15 knockouts, with a better knockout percentage than both of those guys against fighters with between 1 and 4 losses. Vladimir Klitschko had 10 champion fights, and he was stopped in 2 of them. Vitaly. Vladimir Klitschko had only 5 championship fights in his first 40 fights. His first 40. He only had 5. Wilder has 8 and has fucking beat everybody. Vladimir had 5. 5. Against fighters with 5 or more losses, Wilder only has 17. He's only fought 17 of them. Both Vladimir and Vitaly fought more quote-unquote bums than Deontay Wilder in their first 40 fights. Facts. I mean, the numbers don't lie. The numbers don't lie. And Vitaly Klitschko was stopped twice. Don't give a fuck by who. He was stopped. Vladimir Klitschko was knocked the fuck out by a journeyman, a bum. Deontay Wilder has knocked out every man that's ever got in the ring with him. You don't like the numbers? I don't care. They're not my numbers. You don't like them? Go get mad at BoxRec. If you don't like them. Go get mad at Vitaly Klitschko. Go get mad at Vladimir Klitschko. But no, I'm not going past their first 40 because I have nothing to compare it with. Because Wilder only has 40 fights. So while you guys are sitting here shitting on Wilder, talking, oh, well, look what Joshua did in his first 20, using this as a duck excuse. Absolute duck excuse. Well, guess what? Wilder's resume is better than both Vitaly and Vladimir Klitschko. BFTB, and I'm out.